What's up, everyone? We are live at 5. It's Monday, August 3rd. I'm Paul Wontorek.
And I'm Beth Stevens.
How are you, Beth?
I'm good. How are you doing?
It's August. We made it.
I know. I can't. I'm still in March, so everything is all one day to me. But yay, happy August.
We are joined, as always, by Caitlin Moynihan.
Hello.
Hi, Caitlin. Hello. You're on a new Wi-Fi. You're in a whole new setup. But
I
you
know.
look the same.
I'm in Maryland with my parents and my new baby. He's a little baby.
Oh, how does Weasley feel about the fact that Andrew Lloyd Webber is now bad-mouthing the Cats movie?
You know, I had a firm talk with him today. He seemed very upset this morning.
It's all good.
Yes.
Okay, the best thing about it being August is that I have been waiting to see this movie, Howard, for so long, and everyone gets to see it later this week because everyone has Disney Plus now because of Hamilton. Every Broadway fan has Disney Plus. Hey, Beth, who's here today to talk about the movie?
Well, Don Hahn is here. He's producer, director, and writer of this documentary about one of our heroes, Howard Ashman.
The great Howard Ashman.
We take a moment. We all take a moment. The great Howard Ashman.
And the movie is beautiful. I can't wait for everyone to see it. I got a sneak peek of it.
You're so lucky.
So we're going to talk all about it. But first, let's do a little bit of news.
Okay. I'm going to say some words, Paul, that are going to get you very excited.
Okay.
Channing Tatum, musical.
Is it the Magic Mike? The Magic Mike musical is finally coming?
No, check this out. There is going to be a young adult musical version of Lady Macbeth. It's a Lady Macbeth musical. Channing Tatum is not playing Lady Macbeth. Everyone just calm down. Channing Tatum, who everyone knows from Magic Mike and beyond, is one of the producers of this upcoming film, which will be he's producing with Scooter Braun, John McFarlane, and Amazon, which makes me think it will be streaming at some point. There's no casting. I assume you know who Lady Macbeth is. If you don't, you really need to go back to high school. However, what they say about this one is it centers on a teenage girl who grapples with her own morality as she contends with the dreadful consequences of her ambition. So dreadful consequences and ambition sound like Lady Macbeth. The rest I don't know. Anyway, it's coming up. No casting, no production timeline, but I'm already very excited to see what happens with this.
Okay, well, I'm excited because we just found out about a new Lifetime movie that has a lot of people we really like involved. This is the Mahalia Jackson story. And Danielle Brooks, who was just on Live at 5 not that long ago, a couple weeks ago, she didn't tell us about this. She is playing the gospel legend and civil rights activist. And Kenny Leon, who of course directed her, who's directed so many fantastic things on Broadway, but he directed her in Much Ado About Nothing in the Park. He's directing. So yeah, this is an exciting biofilm. Let's say some highlights of her life. She performed for racially integrated audiences from Carnegie Hall to rallies in Washington, D.C., alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She got a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. She's in the Grammy Hall of Fame. And so, yeah, this is we don't know much about it. Of course, you know Danielle Brooks. She's Tasty on Orange is the New Black, and she was in The Color Purple, and she got...
Am I alone now? Should I keep talking? I will tell you that not only was she in Much Ado About Nothing in the Park, but it was fantastic and it was filmed. And I'm not sure where you can see it, but it was really wonderful. I guess I'll just keep going.
Never happened before.
That was weird, but we just kept it going. I don't know. You just kind of.
That was I could do it. I can do it.
I love you, but I don't need you. It's good. And of course, Kenny Leon is a Tony winner, and Danielle Brooks is a Tony nominee for the last revival of The Color Purple.
Right. Yeah. And she also finished Ain't Too Proud. Did you mention that?
Yes, I didn't, but I was waiting for you to jump in. So there you go.
That's all I got. Next.
Okay. We're just going to keep on talking about movies, TV movies. This is a Lifetime holiday movie. I guess it's August, so it's time to start thinking about Christmas. Why not? Tony winner, Ali Stroker, who is fantastic in Oklahoma, there she is, has a new gig in an upcoming holiday movie for Lifetime. It's called they have this It's a Wonderful Lifetime series where they just do holiday movie after. You could just do it all day long, just watch holiday movies. This is called Christmas Ever After. But you could probably put a bunch of words in a blender and it would come up as a holiday movie title. However, listen to the plot. It's so cute. Stroker will play a successful romance novelist who spends each Christmas at her favorite bed and breakfast, which sounds like a good idea. This year, she's facing a deadline and writer's block. Inspiration strikes in the unlikely form, because remember, romance, of the B&B's new owner, played by Daniel De Tomaso. So cute. Everyone knows Ali Stroker, the Tony winner. We know her from the Glee Project. We know her from winning her Tony and making history as a differently abled performer. And there she is, triumphant.
She was also the first performer on Broadway in a wheelchair.
In a wheelchair. That's right. That's right. So we will look forward to that in the holiday season, which feels like it's a million years away.
It's not that.
Our theme is time. Our theme is
not. So the Broadway Advocacy Coalition is one of these great organizations. It's been around, I think, 3 or 4 years, and they've been doing a lot of work recently. And it's, of course, a platform, let me get this right, that advocates for students, artists, organizations, and communities to use the arts as a part of social change. And so they announced a fellowship called the BAC Artivism Fellowship.
They made up a new word.
That's not a typo, right? Okay, good.
No.
It will support artists, activists who use their tools to have an impact in the world around them, providing financial support, mentorship, networking opportunities, and education workshops. This is a brand new thing, and it will specifically support Black, female-identifying artists, artivists in the United States. We're just going to say artivists now, Beth. That's what we're saying.
Yes, we are. That's what we're going to do.
And Wicked is a lead sponsor of this fellowship, and we're going to find out more about this. I'm sure we'll keep talking about it, but that's an exciting new initiative for people who use their Instagram accounts for good.
For good.
For good. See that?
There's the connection. We got it. We got there. Okay, we have some more good news. This has been a lot of good news today. I like August so far. There will be a special outdoor performance of A Little Night Music at London's Holland Park, August 15th, just 2 weeks away. And it will star Janie Dee and Joanna Riding, who've worked together a lot, most recently in the very, very acclaimed Follies from the National Theatre in London. And Janie Dee played Phyllis, and Joanna Riding replaced Imelda Staunton as Sally in that production. So I don't have all of the casting here, but it will be directed by Alistair Knights, and Alex Parker will conduct an 8-piece ensemble in London's Park, and it will be socially distanced. To bring your picnic blanket. You will be very far away from everyone else. Wear a mask and get to hear that gorgeous score. There you go.
Sure. Well, before we get to Don to talk all about Don and Howard, I'm going to give you a little bit of history with Today in Broadway. Today in Broadway is also Today in Berkshires, because what we're actually honoring is the Bridges of Madison County musical, which finally I saw it. I was actually there 7 years ago tonight at the Williamstown Theater Festival for the premiere of this musical by Marsha Norman and Jason Robert Brown that went on to win a Tony for Best Score for Jason Robert Brown. It should have won some acting awards, but that's how these things go, Beth. I'm opinionated about it. Just really quickly, Bridges of Madison County started as a book that I'm sure, Beth, you're a big book reader. Did you even was that too?
I read it.
Did you read it when it first came out? Yeah,
yep.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, and then it became
a huge bestseller, big bestseller.
Well, but then I fell in love with it when this beautiful Clint Eastwood movie that Meryl Streep was in with him came out. And of course, it's the story of a married lady on a farm. She's Italian. And when her husband and family go away, she ends up having an affair with the National Geographic photographer. So they did it up at Williamstown Theater Festival. I just want to clear something up. Elena Shadow.
Yeah, clear this up. Yes.
Elena Shadow did it with Stephen Pasquale. And of course, Stephen Pasquale also did it on Broadway. Elena Shadow was always sort of a temporary hire because Kelly O'Hara was attached to it from the beginning.
Right.
So I've read some articles that's like Kelly O'Hara took over for Broadway. She was pregnant. She couldn't do it.
Elena Shadow filled in and watched Kelly O'Hara out.
Yeah,
because she was having a baby.
She's the mama. She was making
having a baby.
Happen. Yeah. And by the way,
it would have added different layers to the story had she done this pregnant.
She was so fantastic. She ended up covering the role later. Stephen Pasquale, of course, it's Stephen Pasquale. He did it the whole time. There's a lot of nuzzling. There's a lot of. I was actually noticing the posters. So look, this is the first Williamstown poster. And then this is the middle one is the original poster for Broadway. And then they replaced it with the one on the right. The one common thread is Stephen Pasquale nuzzling, because that's
and everyone's eyes
audience
have to be closed. That's right.
For some reason, I can say this because I've talked openly about it to him many times. Stephen Pasquale did not get a Tony nomination for this show, and he should have. It's still a scandal. I'm still going to say it, Beth.
I concur.
And I want to point out one other really fun element. Also in the cast as Caroline, I don't know, the daughter, was, there she is on the left in this horrible photograph. That is Caitlin Kinnunen, who of course went on to, you all fell in love with her in The Prom. So I felt like we should honor that. And one of the great things about the plot of Bridges of Madison County is the bridge, because they meet on this famous, what's it called? The covered bridge. The red. Anyway,
I'm not going to remember that.
Well, but the reason why I brought it up is because Caitlin Kinnunen, who we love, who's also a former blogger of ours, she recently put up a photo of Rosamond Bridge. There it is.
There it is.
That's her on Instagram, and she quoted, "Love is always better," which is a quote for anyone. You might start crying if you really think hard about it. But there she is. So, you know, the Bridges of Madison County lives on. Everyone loves it. I love that show.
You know what? If you feel in this time of quarantine that you need to get your feelings out, you put on that cast album and they will all come out.
And then you watch Howard. Because, man,
good transition.
Howard Ashman. Okay, that's my segue.
And what a segue
why don't you pop back in here? Thank you so much. And thank you for being here, Beth. And Caitlin, will you please introduce our guest?
Gladly. I would love to introduce today's guest. Guys, kicking off this brand new week of Alive at 5 Home Edition Live right here on Facebook and YouTube is the Don Hahn. So you guys, this guy is behind some of mine and everyone in the world's favorite Disney movies and documentaries, you guys. But today he's talking about Howard, the Howard Ashman documentary that is hitting Disney Plus this week. It is premiere week. We're going to talk all about it. He's worked on The Lion King. He has worked on Beauty and the Beast. One of my personal favorites, The Emperor's New Groove. He also does a lot of the Disney nature documentaries as well. So we have a whole lot to talk about. You guys can follow him on social at Don.Hahn, Hahn. Leave all of your questions in the comments below. And everyone, please welcome Don and Paul.
Hi, Don.
So everybody, how are you doing?
So nice
to
meet
see you.
Thank you so much for being here. It's
my pleasure.
I am not exaggerating my enthusiasm about this project. So let's just start with, how long have you actually been in this project of making a documentary, a very well-deserved documentary about Howard Ashman?
You know, probably seriously about 4 years, which seems incredible, but I'm used to taking that long making movies for some reason because of my background in animation. And it started out with just almost an impulse. I had lunch with Sarah, Howard's sister, and like halfway through my cheeseburger, I just said, I think I have to make a documentary about Howard. And she was very polite. And I think later she said she had no clue that I would actually do it. But I felt somehow that I was in a position to not only have known and worked with Howard, but also kind of know his people, his family, his partner, Alan Menken, the actresses and actors that worked with him. And I thought, this story's going to get lost, and I have to try at least to put it together into a place where people can understand who this guy was, what he meant to us as filmmakers and animators at Disney, what he meant to the larger world of musicals and of drama, and that's what I tried to do. So it's been a few years.
So if you don't mind, I would love to just play the quick trailer just to sort of set this up for everyone. And everyone, Howard starts streaming on Friday on Disney Plus, and like I said, I know you all have it because of Hamilton. So here's a taste of what you will get to watch.
Ready to stand. Do that one.
Ready to stand.
As a lyricist, the last great place to do musicals is in animation.
The combination of Howard Ashman's talent and the Walt Disney name was a home run waiting to happen.
The stuff that was coming out of Howard's pen lyrically was just unbelievable.
It's a quiet, you know what I mean?
It's a quiet village.
Yeah.
Howard and Alan Menken had captured the imagination of a generation. We knew something really special was happening, but what we didn't know was that in 9 months, Howard would be gone.
And Howard said, we really have to have a serious talk. I'm sick.
In animation history and in musical history, Howard's mark is indelible.
Yes.
Howard's gift was so strong and his light was so bright that it has not diminished over the years.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you know, I am a huge Howard Ashman fan, and you know, it's one of my big regrets that I didn't get to meet him. And whenever I meet anyone who did get to work with him, like Ellen Greene or Alan Menken, I'm always like, tell me about Howard Ashman. You know, he's just like, his lyrics are so, I mean, they're just so rich and so, I mean, you could just really, do you have any favorites? Do you have any favorite, let me start with that, like Howard Ashman sort of little nuggets, or the movie kind of beautifully highlights a lot of the lyrics.
Yeah, I want to put in as many lyrics as I could. I mean, there's simple things like "Try the gray stuff, it's delicious. Don't believe me, ask the dishes." But there's also more obscure lyrics, like his song about cheese nips from his Vonnegut show, and so I wanted to just. He loves food, and you know, 90% of his songs tend to be about food somewhere. But to kind of treat the audience to some of those lyrics that they may not hear all the time, it was, you know, part of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, yeah. So Howard, let's sort of talk about you. This is an interesting documentary because you are also a character in the documentary. You are one of the voices. You are one of the voices telling the story because you worked with Howard. You have a very long history with Disney. How many years of Disney history do you have?
Oh, over 40, believe it or not. I'm quite elderly.
Wow.
Yeah.
You look fantastic.
Thank you so much.
So what was your very first Disney job?
Wow, I was working on Pete's Dragon, the original Pete's Dragon, back in the 70s. I started in the 70s with people like Tim Burton and Brad Bird and John Lasseter and those guys. And it was a great time because all the animators that worked with Walt Disney were still there. So you could go have lunch with them and hear stories about, you know, Walt, and kind of learn about filmmaking and animation from the guys who invented feature animation. So I was lucky. I was really lucky to be there at the right time. Now,
Howard came to Disney. He, of course, started in musical theater. He started in our world. He's a part of our world first. He, of course, met up really, and you tell his story beautifully. And that's really the part of the story I really wanted to sort of like hear about, his early days in New York and his sort of, you know, his summer stock days and sort of all of his sort of everyone knows him from Little Shop of Horrors, obviously. But what I think I didn't know for very many years is that because I don't know why this isn't talked about more, but he directed Little Shop of Horrors off Broadway. Like he's not just, you know, it was, I don't know if people automatically think of Howard, and he also directed Smile, correct, on Broadway. Because I didn't originally think of him as a director, but if you really think of the vision of Little Shop of Horrors, is it fair to say that like a lot of just the whole sort of concept of that sort of sprung out of his brain?
Yeah, it really did, and I think it's easy to think of Howard as a lyricist, which he was brilliantly so, and yet he was really a dramatist. He did it all. He was a book writer. He was a director. He was a lyricist on top of all that, and took on all those roles on a lot of things. And even when he got to Disney, he was a producer on Little Mermaid, along with being a lyricist. So he was our mentor in many ways, but he really contributed so much more than just lyrics. And when you go to his earlier shows like Rosewater or you know, kind of his earliest WPA shows that he was putting on in his own theater, he was doing all that, and he had his own theater, so he could, you know, program things that were non-musicals, program things that he had written, workshop things, try things out, and you know, I just think of the commitment that must have taken to come. You know, he was in his 20s, right out of Indiana University, and he moves to New York at a time when you could affordably move to New York as a student, and takes on this kind of you know, crummy old space downtown and turns it into a theater. And that's where all these things came from. And that was his workshop. That was his kind of hallowed ground, so to speak, where he could stay small. It was a 99-seat theater. He could workshop things. He could try things out and collaborate with people. And I think that was a really formative, magical time in his life.
I would love to play this really quick, that off-Broadway ad for Little Shop of Horrors, because I feel like people know the movie Little Shop of Horrors, and Little Shop of Horrors has obviously grown over the years, and there can be very slick, big productions of Little Shop of Horrors. But I love this ad because I feel like it really kind of captures the original. So I'm just going to play that really quickly.
Never before in the history of the American stage have you seen such high drama.
You don't meet nice boys when you live on Skid Row, Mr. Bushnick.
Suspense.
Little red dots all over the floor.
And romance. It's bone-chilling. It's spine-tingling. It's a musical. It's a nifty laugh riot, entertaining as it is exotic. Little Shop of Horrors. Don't shop around. Go see it at the Westwood Playhouse.
Yeah, I just love that because I feel like that's kind of really sort of captured what I imagine was in his brain a little bit in a sort of a beautiful way. But what's interesting about his Disney affiliation is it actually came out of Broadway failure, right? Little Shop of Horrors, the huge success of Little Shop of Horrors at the tiny WP Theater and then moving to the Orpheum got him this major opportunity to collaborate with Marvin Hamlisch on this musical version of this popular 70s movie about teenage beauty pageants, Smile. And it just was, it sounds like it was devastating to him, the failure of that.
Yeah, I think it was. Just from talking, in the film, we wanted to really go after people who knew Howard fairly closely, whether it was family or close collaborators, and talking to people like Judy Benson, who was cast as the star of that show. It was devastating for all of them. And I think the process was just devastating for Howard. Marvin Hamlisch is a genius for sure, but I think their collaboration was not an easy one or a natural one, the way that Alan Menken was. And then there were also producer issues and financial issues and things, and Howard was carrying the weight on his shoulders. He was directing that, and he had written the book and was writing lyrics, and so just the kind of exhaustion factor of trying to push back against all those elements for a guy who really, I think, in his heart believed in staying small and workshopping things in a smaller environment until you could be sure of how they were coming together. And even when Little Shop was a huge hit, he really resisted going to Broadway with it. He wanted to stay at the Orpheum. He wanted to stay in these smaller venues. And that was who he was. And I think there was a vulnerability to that. I think he feared humiliation in some sense by exposing himself to those larger venues. And ironically, he never really had that kind of success on Broadway until just recently when Aladdin or Mermaid or those shows started to recur on Broadway. So I think Smile was really devastating for him, and that in large part is why he came to Los Angeles. He just wanted to get away. I think he was angry at the reviews. He was frustrated with the Broadway community and just kind of the experience of it all. And lucky us, we were the beneficiaries of that huge failure. And honestly, we never knew about it. Howard never came in and said, "Oh, I just had a huge failure." He was all about the work, and he had come to Disney. He wrote a screenplay for Tina Turner. In fact, one of the amazing things I came across during my research was a great audio tape of Howard and Tina having lunch together, and Tina's making sandwiches, and Howard's asking questions about her life. And I just thought, well, there's a whole movie there. But that kind of notion of coming into Disney and saying there's a whole place where the American musical can exist off of Broadway, and it's an animation, was a big breakthrough for him, and obviously for us too. Yeah, the other irony of him going to Disneyland is that in Smile, of course, the big Jody Benson's big song was all about "I want to go to Disneyland." That's right. That was the big sort of the one big song from Smile that a lot of people know. And he really did find a beautiful place to blossom. It sounds like it didn't happen immediately, but he sort of quickly, I guess, became part of that team out there, right? And did you meet him? When did you meet him? I met him in New York. He had already started working on Little Mermaid. David Geffen suggested him to Jeffrey Katzenberg, and even Peter Schneider, who was the company manager on A Little Shop, was the head of animation at Disney at that time. So it was a really small world. And so Howard ended up coming to California and working on Little Mermaid. I was in London working on Who Framed Roger Rabbit at the time. So it wasn't until we met kind of in New York on one of the first Beauty and the Beast meetings that I actually got to sit down with him and the director and start to talk about that movie. And you know, I knew him by reputation. The songs from Mermaid were glorious, and just anybody who was working on that movie knew that there was something special happening. And he had also written the songs for Aladdin before he got to Beauty and the Beast. I mean, he had written this amazing kind of Calloway score for Aladdin and brought that script into the studio as something he wanted to do. And Aladdin fell on some story problems. And again, lucky Don, he was available with Alan. And so we convinced him that while Aladdin was kind of correcting its story problems, that we would be able to get him to write the songs on Beauty and the Beast. And luckily he jumped at that. And that became kind of our, you know, our way to start working. So that's when I started meeting with him kind of in, you know, gosh, it would have been 88 or 89 in New York.
Mm-hmm. Here's some great images. That's Howard. I love that photo. That's kind of the poster. Isn't that the poster image now?
Yeah.
And here's how. Now this is really interesting. This is Howard and Alan when they won the Oscar, and that was for what song?
Little Mermaid, for the sea, I believe.
Right, Under the Sea. Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in the film clip that I found of them accepting the award, their name is announced and Howard stands up and he's sitting right behind Marvin Hamlish. But I just think, God, everything was like this small little coincidental world. And I don't think there was any necessarily animosity between the two of them, but they certainly had a history together, and it must have been a proud moment for Howard to accept that. And of course, when he won an Oscar for Beauty and the Beast, he was gone already. We had lost him, and his partner Billy accepted the award for him.
What was interesting about the other Oscar night is that Alan Menken has talked about on Broadway.com about, isn't that he found out he didn't know Howard was sick yet. I mean, Howard had AIDS and really kept it very private. It was a totally different time. He really, I'm assuming most people didn't know, right, at Disney. I mean, people sort of working with him. And he didn't tell Alan even until after that win, I believe. I believe it was like right after that. What do you find the most? I mean, that's a heartbreaking fact of his life. What sort of really kept you when you dig into a story like this? You've been really living with Howard, and telling the story, and you want to tell it properly, and you want to get the right sound bites and the right images, and you want to sort of pull it together in a beautiful way, which you did. But what really sort of kept you? What do you find really compelling about this man and his life, and made you really want to get this story out there?
Well, I've always been interested in kind of my artistic heroes, for lack of a better word. And 25, 30 years has passed since I worked with Howard. And, and he is a mentor and a kind of a hero to all of us. So I wanted to examine that more. And I think we all know his work. You can still go to Walt Disney World or a theme park when they're open to be able to hear his work and his songs, and you can sing them. And I always thought, what goes into that? What's the human being that is behind those things? And I always thought it's revelatory to be able to understand that. And what I really wanted to do is bring Howard back to life for a while. I love that notion about documentaries, that you can actually breathe life into a person, and in this case, let Howard tell his story and understand what went into it. Understand that this is a guy who, yes, he was talented, but he did the work and paid his dues, and he learned his craft. And he went to, got his master's degree in American musical theater. And he had no special kind of agenda or help along the way. He didn't go to Yale or do something that might have promoted his career in New York. He had humble beginnings. This gay Jewish guy from Baltimore who went to Indiana University is an unlikely candidate to have this success. And I want to understand that more myself, and hopefully the audience would appreciate that too. And then just the bravery of going into Manhattan and starting his own theater and having a place where he could launch these things. So he has a deep history, and knowing that the lyrics and songs that we know that he wrote with Alan or with Marvin Hamlish are grounded in this amazing craft that he had. And that was a lifelong thing. From the time he was 5 years old and putting on musicals in his basement with his friends, it was a lifelong love affair with musical theater, and he grew up with it. And that kind of grounding in musical theater really, I think, helps us understand who he was. And yes, there were failures, and yes, there were frustrations, and yes, he was a complicated guy. But in the end, I think that's what I wanted to do in the movie, is just kind of show the whole human being, and let you as an audience understand a little bit more about who Howard was.
We're so lucky by how much music he created, and you know what I mean. I mean, there's so many songs and so many shows actually. Let's bring Caitlin back in and take a few questions. I forgot about the music.
Yes. Love music. Okay, so I really love this question. Libby wants to know, what do you determine as being Howard's greatest contribution to musical theater?
It's something that may not be original to Howard, but it's something that he really understood and drummed into us, certainly in our animated musicals, which was using the songs to tell a story. It's too easy to throw some songs in a movie and call it a musical, and that's not a musical. I think what Howard really understood through the Lehman Ingle workshops and through his work and his knowledge and all that kind of thing is the songs are that point in the story when the character is so full of emotion, whether it's love or hate or passion or hunger or whatever, you can't help but sing about it. And so when you see songs like Ursula's song from Little Mermaid, Ariel doesn't even know Ursula exists at the beginning of that song. And 2 minutes later, she's signing her voice away to this person. Or the mob song in Beauty and the Beast, Gaston doesn't know there's a beast. So Belle comes out with a magic mirror and holds it up. And there's a beast in the mirror. And he says, there's a beast. We got to kill him. And they sing about it. There's all this kind of plot packed into that song. Or even like the beginning of Beauty and the Beast, we had storyboarded that as a non-musical piece where Belle goes to the town and buys a loaf of bread and buys a book, and she meets Gaston and she meets LeFou, and you meet her father, and you see that she's different from the rest of us. And Howard said, well, I'll take that. And then he musicalizes that into 4 or 5 minutes where it has plot and character introductions and narrative and dialogue and music. And so I think his biggest gift, at least from my perspective to all of us, is that idea that songs aren't just about pretty melodies, although thank God Alan Menken gave us plenty of those. They're about plot and narrative, and great musicals from any number of authors do that. And they give us this wonderful sense of forward narrative in the song.
Wow. Beautiful. Okay, so Jane says you mentioned Tina Turner and sandwiches. She wants to know, did you discover anything else that surprised you while doing research for Howard?
I was surprised a little bit at how maybe vulnerable is the word that Howard was. To me, he was an incredibly confident, smart, funny person, which he was. But I think in talking to Alan and reading a lot of his letters to his sister and that kind of thing, he was, like the rest of us, vulnerable and didn't want to be humiliated by his work. I think we can all relate to that. We all, feel uncomfortable about what we do in our work at some point in our life. And Howard really did. And I think that goes back to him wanting to stay small. I mean, Alan said at some point, had Howard lived longer, he really wanted to have a children's theater. He wanted to keep that sense of kind of small, intimate environments was something where he could really thrive and not have to worry about being humiliated or reading critics or any of that. And that's where Howard lived. And I think there's a humility to that. There's a vulnerability to that. And that was a big reveal for me when I was researching him.
Wow. Oh, wow. I could listen to you talk about Howard all day long.
Wait,
right.
I have an unrelated question. This is like a Snoopy kind of question. I see that you're an executive producer on the live action Hunchback of Notre Dame, according to IMDb. What do you want to tell us? There's a lot of fans of that, there's a lot of fans of that original movie. And then I know there was a stage adaptation of it that was
a great stage adaptation that probably would still be running in Berlin if the COVID virus wasn't around. that was a unique opportunity, and I think Alan's best score. It's hard to put a best on somebody like Alan Menken, but there's something about Alan and Stephen Schwartz together that was, to me, very much like Alan and Howard together. Steve was a great dramatist, and his sophistication with that material, which was tough material to cover in an animated film, actually works better on stage, I think, than anything. Mm-hmm. So, we've talked about it for a long time, and it's spectacular material, and it's in the works.
Cool. So that'll be a few years of your life, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I'm assuming you're always sort of doing multiple things, right? You have your fingers in a lot of different projects at once.
I'm lucky. I have. I think I'm probably attention deficit a little bit, so I enjoy the variety of it all, and I like going away from a film and coming back to it because it gives you fresh eyes, and I think we've all experienced that, where you can get away from a project, whether it's writing or painting or dancing or whatever you do, and come back to it and go, what was I thinking? And I do that a lot. So to be able to step away from a project, whether it's, I've been doing a lot of documentaries lately, which I adore, and it's kind of a golden age of documentaries right now, but to be able to step aside, work on something else, and then come back, it just gives you that fresh outlook on things that you can be more critical of yourself and have more fresh eyes when you come back to something.
Well, with Disney Plus, you can make a whole Howard Ashman playlist, right? I mean, you can just sort of go through.
Totally, yeah. In fact, I think we're working on something like that with Spotify to try to pull together the things you never heard but should hear, Howard Ashman playlist.
Yeah, I love that. Well, congratulations! I love the movie. I learned so much.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much.
I was really excited. The minute I heard it was happening, I couldn't wait to watch it. So everyone can watch it starting Friday on Disney Plus, and it's fantastic. And get to know Howard Ashman, because his story is one that you already know his work, but if you don't know his story, you should get to know that as well. Thank you again, Don.
My pleasure. Thanks, you guys.
Beth's still there. Hi, Beth.
I'm still here.
Do you want to share your favorite Howard? Do you have any favorite Howard Ashman songs, or do you want to sing something?
Well, I'm not going to sing anything, but I am going to immediately after this look up the Cheese Nips song from God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. That's next. That's my next move after this.
It's classic.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks again. Caitlin, why don't you take us out?
Gladly. Yes, thank you guys so much for tuning in for another fun episode of Live at 5 Home Edition, live right here on Facebook and YouTube. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts by searching for hashtag Live at 5 and hitting that subscribe button. And in honor of today's topic, taking us out today is Miss Ellen Green singing Somewhere That's Green from Little Shop of Horrors.
A matchbox of her own, a fence, a frilled chain link, a grill out on the patio, disposal in the sink, a washer and a dryer, and an ironing machine, and a tract house that we share, somewhere that's green.